This is Bootstrapped Web, episode number 55. This is the podcast for you if you're the founder who learns by doing as you're bootstrapping your business online. Today, we're going to talk about leveraging other people, going beyond just yourself in all these different ways. I am Jordan.
And I'm Brian.
Excellent. Brian, nice to see you again. Nice to come back after the new year. Today's episode is going to be pretty interesting. Before we dive into it, let's give a quick update, see what you've been up to over the past week or two. Happy New Year, by the way.
Yeah, Happy New Year to you and you guys for listening. I mean, this is good to talk to you again here, and just excited to get fired up for 2015. And I'm already hitting the ground running with a bunch of plans that I had put in place. So yeah, I mean, a little bit of an update. I am putting together all these pieces for this new kind of sales funnel marketing push that I'm doing with Restaurant Engine, and I have the exact plans in place, the things that I want to start doing. But once you start getting into it, it's like, oh man, there's just that to-do list just gets longer and longer. It's like for everything that I do, whether it's putting up a landing page or creating like a drip campaign or something, it's like 3 more to-do lists pop up. It's like, oh, you gotta line that up, you gotta hook this up, you gotta get the Facebook ad running, you gotta do this and that. It's like, and then with limited time, things just move so much slower. I thought everything was gonna literally press go on January 1st, but here we are. What is it, the 6th today, and it's still not running yet.
Yeah. It's like the web of to-dos. Once you hook up a landing page, you say, oh, I can't actually launch a landing page yet because I have to go make this campaign. Oh, and I can't make the campaign until I publish the PDF to a URL. And I can't do that until, and like forces you to go backwards. But
yeah,
I think that's why going through something for the first time sucks. And the next time you do it, it's not surprising, and so you're not like as emotionally affected by moving backwards. You just say, oh, this is the next thing I need to do. All right, yeah. Cool.
Of course, and then like everything else that I'm doing, like putting together a marketing funnel. The thing is, I have a fully custom designed site, and I mean it's on WordPress, but all the themes and all of our functionality and plugins are basically custom. So everything takes that much longer because I have this need to custom code everything for whatever reason, and that kind of brings me to my next update here, and that is I'm starting to seriously think about bringing on a developer, so I'm kind of like beginning this search for a developer to come on and work with me in some kind of like part-time capacity, a couple of days a week, and I'm starting to think about like the best ways to go about doing this, because in the past I've always hired, and we're going to be talking much more about this in today's episode, of like leveraging other people and working with a team and whatnot, but in the past, when it comes to development work, like coding work, I can do a little bit of front end, not so much back end, and I've always kind of hired on like a project basis. I need a certain XYZ thing done. Let's talk to a couple of my preferred developers and get a quote and get it done. But now this year, one of my big kind of goals is to bring on a developer and work with me, day to day, week to week, on a whole variety of stuff, whether it's hooking up marketing pages or developing a new feature in the app, developing custom plugins, working with the Stripe API, a lot of that kind of stuff. I'm just looking for someone to kind of collaborate with on a day-to-day basis. So I guess I'll keep you guys updated on that, and if you're listening and you might be interested in this kind of thing, or someone who might be interested in this type of role, I'm definitely looking in the next few weeks and months.
Nice. Very interesting to hear that, and potentially interesting for people out in the audience. We'll see.
Jordan, what's up with you?
Oh, man. I'm just so relieved to be back home in Portland. I lost my mind again, my insatiable need to roam around the country. It kind of went too far. I mean, it was great to go on vacation and see family and all that, and be down in the sun in Miami, so not a bad thing.
It's hard to complain about being in Miami in December, but
no, I'm not complaining about that. But I think we all get into this mindset of you're just kind of ready to go back to work, and there are definite benefits from being away and thinking differently, and now I'm just happy to be back, so I can just move a lot faster. So it's good to be back in Portland, and I'm just happy about the access to the food here. Finally, Miami's good, but the food here is better.
There you
And
go.
very much related to today's show, and very much related to what you said in your update. It's time for me to find a full-time developer in a CTO type role, ideally here in the Portland area. I think what's happened over the past few weeks is I've kind of bought in, I've kind of burned the boats, so to speak, and I'm going all in on Carthook for 2015. And as I do that, as I just think about Carthook all the time, there's so much to do. There's so many different ideas and features, and just pushing beyond the initial vision into a bigger thing, a bigger business, a bigger offering, and that can't be done with just the part-time. Charlie, my main man, my co-founder, has a full-time job, and now the development needs are starting to stack up. And if I want to not just stay on top of what needs to get done, but instead go beyond that and try to reach for the vision that I actually have for the business over the next year, I just do not see a way to do that without a full-time developer on board who shares my vision and works on that side of the business full-time. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I think that's, as both of us are thinking about this, that's why today's topic kind of came out in our conversations about how to leverage other people, how to go beyond just yourself, how to hire people, attract people, what to do in each phase, and how other people besides just yourself can help you. And that's what I'm excited to get into in today's episode. But first, we're going to take a quick break to talk about very smart people who leave iTunes reviews for our podcast. So what do we got going on, Brian? Who's smart this week?
So it's been a couple of weeks since our last episode, and we've got 2 new iTunes reviews to call out here today. One is from Steve Lee. He says, "Love your content. As you both know," man, the type here is so small, so I got to squint. "As you both know, there are tons of business podcasts out there, and some good ones, some not so good. My first experience was the episode about building a sales funnel. You both did a great job sharing your experience and understanding of the process. I also like the fact that you shared your troubles building your own and what you learned from your challenges. I enjoyed my first experience and look forward to many more. You have a good one." Well, thank you, Steve. And yeah, I totally agree. It's really all about learning from your mistakes more than the things that work.
Yeah, and admitting them and talking about it.
Yeah, maybe we're a little bit too open here on this podcast, but I don't think we'll be holding back anytime soon.
The more open, the more good things happen. So, in a world of good podcasts and not so good podcasts, we have officially been declared a good one.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Steve. It was Steve, right?
Yep. And we got one more from Tyler Banfield. He says, "Subscribe right now" is his headline.
Yes. Why does that sound so familiar? Why does that name sound so familiar? Maybe I follow him on Twitter.
Yeah, I think me too. I think I probably emailed with him before. If not, Tyler, email me. Let's then that's a true statement. So 5 stars from Tyler. He says, "Of all the podcasts in the bootstrapping space, this one is currently the most actionable. Whether it's Brian and Jordan talking or they're hosting a guest, these guys deliver a ton of value. I also really like that 50 to 80 minute format allows them to really dig into topics." That's good to hear, Tyler, because
seriously.
Sometimes I feel like we're going a little bit long here with these episodes, but I also like the long format too. I don't like to cut it too short. So
yeah, I think we just get self-conscious about talking for so long.
And after the 60-minute mark, I basically just assume nobody's listening anymore. That's when the good stuff comes out.
Right? Only the true believers. Yeah, and I think I either follow him on Twitter. I don't know. I just looked him up. He's got a site called inboundwords.com. So a little plug there for inboundwords.com. Looks like a blog writing service. Very interesting. Cool. All right, cool. Yeah. Thank you very much, Tyler. Brian, I think it's time. Let's get into this one.
Let's get into it. So today we are talking about leveraging other people, and I think really the way this episode came together as we were talking about it is like, we always try to start with some kind of problem where you're at it, in your day to day. And I think the thing that I've run into time and time again, and it's just an ever learning experience on this, is getting out of the bubble, getting out of my own head, getting out of my own office, and reaching out to other people and getting them to help with this mission of building something from the ground up. And it's about making progress faster than you're making it today, but then it's also walking that line as bootstrappers and the cash flow of bringing on people. How do you manage the cash flow and working with people and delegating and all this stuff? So we're going to kind of talk through a little bit of the high-level stuff today. And Jordan, I think we're going to make this kind of like a two-parter episode, right?
Yes. Today we'll talk about a bit more general, but we won't stay too high above everything in terms of hiring, partnering, and what people deal with, what we've dealt with at each stage of the game. And then next week we'll just go all in on nitty-gritty, and we'll take a look at a real situation. Like, I need to hire a support person for CardHook. I am spending way too much time on customer support, and Brian, you happen to have a lot of experience in hiring the right people, and so we'll just kind of go through helping me figure out all these hesitations and fears about how am I going to do this, and how much should I pay, and what if I don't have that much work to support someone full-time? What are my options? How am I going to transfer all this knowledge to them? So I think it'll be a cool two-part thing. Today we'll talk about one piece of it, and the next week we'll just get all the way into the detail of how to get it done.
Yeah, and like in a way, I think next week when we talk about hiring the customer support team, like that's something that I've become a little, much more confident with today than I was maybe a year or two ago. Because I have two people working with me on customer support, and I've kind of got that process nailed down. But today I guess we're in a way we're talking about developers, right? Like bringing on development help, but this can translate to other people like sales help, marketing help as well. And this actually gets trickier, right? And we're going to talk through some of the challenges with getting things done and moving forward. So let's get right into it. What we like to do from time to time is break things down and structure the episode in terms of phases, right? So today we're going to talk about three main phases. The first one is getting to launch, or getting something off the ground from 0 to 1, if you will. And then the next phase is kind of that early traction, so getting your first 10 or 20 customers. And again, we're not talking about sales and marketing and how to get customers today. We're talking about leveraging the people and resources to help you get there. So that's phase 2 is early traction, and then the third phase is growth. Once, like, how do you go from scrapping your way through getting a handful of customers to really growing this thing into a scalable and just like scaling it up, and then how to kind of bringing on people, how does that factor into it there? And the whole time here, it's all about how do we do this realistically when we need to pay the bills, we don't have big time investors. How do we actually make this work, right?
Right. This is all in the context of bootstrapping your business. A lot of us look at funded companies and we say, obviously you're getting a lot done. You've got 8 people on board and you've got, $2 million of other people's money. That I could hire 8 people too. In our situations, you're maybe paying yourself. Maybe you're making a little less than paying yourself, or a little more. But to think about how are you possibly going to hire someone full-time while doing this is a real challenge. But what we want to do with this episode is basically just open up some of these options, because people get into a mindset of they're stuck, they have no other options, they have to do everything, and the truth is there are other options out there. Mm-hmm. And we'll just kind of take a look at what those options are for each phase of the business. And I think.
So what about this idea of like thinking beyond just yourself, right? Because I think a lot of people, especially developers and web developers, because we can do so much ourselves. We have that ability to code something up from scratch, right? How do we get out of that mindset of like not doing everything ourselves?
I think you look. Some people are amazing, and some people are lucky, and chances are that you're not one of them. I'm not one of them. Most 99% of people don't do everything amazingly well, right? There aren't many Josh Pigford with barometrics just like, making the whole thing happen. That's awesome, but if I had to guess, and we got into more of his story, there are probably other people that contributed to that as well. So the whole idea of this is you to bank everything on you doing everything, the development, the sales, the customer support, the marketing, the web design, the outreach, the blog posts, all these things yourself is just a really, really tall task.
Yep.
And you have to come to terms with the fact that you might have a much higher chance of success by working with other people. So we say leveraging, but it's not like we're using other people. It's just admitting there are other people out there in the world. Getting them to help, getting them to contribute, getting them to team up with you, partner, will most likely have a very good effect on your business.
Yeah, I mean, the big learning experience for me over the past couple of years has been getting out of this mindset of I can do everything myself, or I can learn to do everything myself. Like that was my mindset early on, and so what I mean by that is, as a web designer and developer, I come from a background of figuring things out, of like Googling and looking for a solution to a problem, and then just like gritting my way through it. However many hours into the wee hours of the night it takes, I'll just figure it out and do it myself. Whether it's fixing a quirk in IE6 for a website, or it's figuring out how to market a product for the first time. That was my approach for many years, and I think to a certain extent it still is today. But you get to a point where it's like, even if you learn it yourself and figure things out and read all the books, it's still like, if you come from a development background, let's say, the marketing stuff or the sales stuff is still not going to be, that's not going to be where you excel, even if you learn it. I mean, I think you should learn it. I think there's tremendous value in learning all these different aspects as you build into becoming a business owner. But at a certain point, you need to admit to yourself that other people know this way better than you do.
Yes. So let's get into the first phase, right? Before you have a launch product, when you're trying to get to launch, a lot of people in this scenario, whether you're a developer or a non-technical person and you want to get an idea or a business launched, trying to do everything yourself, it may be impossible, right? I could never have developed CardHook. It makes no sense to try to learn to do something like that. So I was stuck. I had to work with somebody else. In your situation, right?
Yeah, when I started Restaurant Engine, I was coming from doing lots of client work the year before and through the launch of Restaurant Engine. So I had a decent savings saved up, and I knew I wanted to move into products. So I just decided, like, I have a little bit of cash in the bank. I'm going to allocate this much to bringing on a developer. And this was a developer that I had already worked with on several projects doing client work. So I was already comfortable working with him. I knew exactly how we worked together, and it was perfect. And he kind of just worked with me on a project basis, which lasted several months, getting the nuts and bolts of Restaurant Engine launched.
Right. So this is essentially option number one, right? Hire people on a contract basis.
Yeah.
Whether you need something technical built and you're hiring someone for that as a project, or you are a developer and you want to focus on that and you can hire someone to build out the marketing site and whatever else you need. So that's option one, is to essentially find people to pay either by the hour or by the project to get your product launched.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we need to mention here is, like, in terms of like getting to launch before you have any paying customers, of course, we're not saying, go out and invest all this money or all these resources into building a product before it is at least somewhat validated. Or I think you should certainly go ahead and get some kind of landing page out there, or do some cold email outreach to potential customers, do some customer research. That's certainly what I was doing with Restaurant Engine before I did anything. So it's like, what we're talking about here is once you get to the point where you're ready to build some kind of version 1, so you've been pre-selling it, or you have a sizable early access list, or something like that. Now it's time to build something, but now it's time to figure out how are we going to get from nothing to something that people can start using. We've got to get people on board, or you got to build it yourself.
Right. Once you're committed. The other option is the route I took. Right. Option 2 is basically finding a technical person to build it for you in exchange for a piece of the business. So I talked to different web shops about basically for a contract basis, how much is it going to cost to build this MVP? And there are a decent number of developers and dev shops popping up these days that will build you an MVP specifically in an affordable range, somewhere between $2,000 and $10,000 sort of thing, which I think is a great development and a necessary one. I decided not to go that route because I found someone willing to forego the money up front in exchange for a piece of the business. And given CartHook's requirements and the nature of the product, I just thought it's not one of these things that you build and you're done. It's constant tweaking, constant improvement, constant integrations. So I thought it made more sense to have someone on board who's going to be interested in the long term.
Can you define that? So in terms of piece of the business, are we talking about giving away equity or percentage of revenue, or like how does that work?
I did both because I thought that was the right thing, the fair thing, and the smart thing for the business and for everyone involved. So I basically said, look, you build it, I'll market it and sell it, and you get to work hard up front, and you come out of it with an asset, a piece of an asset that will appreciate over time. And then I have all the incentive and the motivation to go out and sell it, because then I get to benefit from that. So it's one of these things like, okay, you invest up front, and then I'll invest over the long run, and we both benefit. Yeah, and it has worked out really well. And the way I did it, to get into a bit of detail, is I basically met and had coffee with someone that I knew was a very talented developer, and I basically just talked with him about business in general. And my philosophies and what I have done in the past, my thinking about business and what's going to happen in the web over the next few years, and how to acquire customers and how to minimize the risk involved in launching this type of business. This is I did that foundation course from Dane Maxwell a few years ago. Mm-hmm. The single biggest return I got from the foundation was not the course, but it was a lot of the thinking that goes into idea extraction and proving that people want this product before you build it. So
how did that translate to
translated
bring on your developer?
Yes, it sounds a little weird, but that translated a lot into the conversations with the developer. So I talked to him about, look, this is what I've been doing. I have been emailing these different markets. These are the feedback I'm getting. This is what you can do to ensure you're developing a product that people want. Right. So I basically
it's like getting him to buy into what's
exactly right. The truth is I didn't really have the idea for CartHook nailed down at that point in time as my main idea. But before I left San Francisco, which is where I hung out with him and had coffee, he basically said to me, look, man, I know how to do the technology side of things. I don't really know the business side of things, and I want to learn them, and I trust you and all this other stuff. So if you want to do this, then I'm in. That was is basically like whatever idea you pick, I'm good with, because you handle that sort of things and I'll handle this sort of things. So that's really how I translated a business experience and mindset to attract a developer in exchange for a piece of the business.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think there are a lot of developers out there who just never accept that type of thing. They just don't work for equity. I know there are a lot of people like that. And then there are plenty of developers who are looking for some kind of equity, contract or some kind of, situation like that. And there are plenty of younger developers or lesser experienced developers who are looking to work with someone who's been at it for a couple years and and learn something while they get some meaningful work done along the
Mm.
way. And I think it's interesting how you described there, like, because if you rewind back to this point when you were sitting down for the first time with your new developer, I mean, you're starting from nothing. You're presenting an idea. It's just an idea, and you have to sell it to them sell it to this potential developer or this partner, in terms of like, look, I've done this customer development work. Here's the progress being made there. This is the pain and the problem solution that people are responding to. It's like you have to sell that problem solution to the developer to get them to really on board with the idea that, like, look, they're not just writing code that's going to be tucked away in some product that never sees the light. They're writing code that could go somewhere.
Yes, and so that is what's happening right in real life. You are talking about this problem and solution and how you're maximizing the potential for success, all that. But in reality, what's happening is that you are selling yourself and working with you and getting into this long-term business marriage together, and you're showing the way you think and how you approach other people. Are you trying to just just screw people over and just make as much money as possible, or are you careful? Or so that's what's happening underneath the surface. When someone's looking at you and saying, do I want to work with this guy for a long time for exchange of equity with this guy's company? Can I trust this guy?
Yeah.
So that's what's actually making the sale.
It always, and I think, like, in your situation, it's good because he was a family friend of yours, right? Like, so you had some kind of history. You kind of knew him.
Yes. My wife is friends with his older brother.
Okay, so there's a little bit of a connection there.
A little bit of a connection, but not like we see each other at holidays sort of thing.
Gotcha.
Not at all.
Okay, but then through meeting with him and like having these conversations, you both came to the conclusion, like, okay, this could work. It always amazes me how fast, and I've made this mistake myself plenty of times, but like how fast strangers jump into bed together for the idea of becoming partners on something. And I get like cold emails from people sometimes. This has happened multiple times. Completely cold email. I've never heard of you before. Let's partner on a clone of Restaurant Engine for this other industry. And they'll write like a whole long email, like, we'll split the equity this way, and like, what do you say? Send. It's like.
Yeah.
What do they expect someone to say to that?
I don't know. You got to go one thing at a time. Yeah, and if this guy I somewhat knew through a family friend, but other people who are doing this on their own, you just have to go slow and get to know people.
Yeah.
You got to go to freaking PHP meetups and talk to people, and whatever will complement your skills, you need to go and meet people. And I think that's the whole theme of this show. It's just teaming up with other people. That if you're going to do it, then at least try to do it the right way.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, I think that's a good, like, actionable tip there, is like, get out to the meetups, to the local groups, the educational workshops, like that. Where are developers, or if you're looking for a marketer, go to the marketing meetups.
Yeah.
Someone to help out in that area. I mean, like, just get out and start to meet people. Go out to conferences.
Yeah, there's a lot going on these days. These startup weekends, right? There is a lot going on. Online forums. There's because Meetup is there, but I don't really go to meetups. But there are a lot of other things. Like Portland happens to have some like community message board for the startup community called Switchboard. I'm sure there's that in a lot of different places. But if you just go on there and people just write things like, hey, I just got out of this project and these are my skills, and I'm open to having coffee with people to talk about what they're working on. Like, just do it.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like something like going out to a meetup or going out or spending on a ticket to go out to a conference. If your goal is like, I'm going to get a ticket to this conference and I'm going to find my technical partner for my new app, you're probably not going to have success. But if you get into the routine of networking and meeting new people, you might meet someone who might become part of a mastermind group with you, and then a few months down the road, you're looking for someone and they can refer someone. It's like that's what this kind of stuff leads to.
Yes, I think that's a great episode in the future. Now that we're both going to MicroConf,
Yes.
I have lots of cynical, terrible, horrible dreams about how to network effectively. We can definitely talk about that. All
Yeah,
these
we should.
different issues and setting up dinners and stuff.
Yeah,
So that
totally. Maybe we
cool.
should do an episode from Vegas, from MicroConf.
All right, now we're talking.
Uh-oh.
Cool. So look, that's you know, I wish we had more about that first getting to launch phase, but
That's it.
that's kind of like this weird hidden thing. You have to figure out how to find someone that will help you.
Yeah,
And
and the point of going from one phase to the next is how are you going to get to the next phase? And usually the answer is you got to bring in help one way or the other.
right, even if you're a developer and you can do everything yourself and you can code and design and everything, chances are you'd be better off working with somebody else who complements you. Somebody who has an audience, who knows how to hustle, who does events already, who is in your industry, a partner, something that will help you get there faster.
Yeah, and by the way, leveraging other people doesn't necessarily mean hiring them.
No, no.
It can mean just picking someone's brain and getting some advice on a certain topic. So if you're a developer and you need a little bit of help in doing customer development because you've never done it before, reach out to someone in your network who maybe you've met at a meetup or wherever, and ask them, like, how would you go about this? Like, your problem right now is you don't have enough interested potential customers, so how would I go about doing that? Or like, how do you set up your very first marketing funnel? Like, maybe talk to someone about that and just get a few ideas, Or like the other day, I was talking to someone about telling them about how I'm getting ready to hire, a developer to work with me. What are some tips on like who I should look for? Should I look for a front end guy or a back end guy or gal and he gave me some really great tips on like what to include in the job ad and who exactly to look for with what kind of background, and like a 10-minute conversation can potentially make a huge impact on the person that I end up working with, and so it's just always be open to reaching out and asking for help.
That's right. Now, let's say we're launched,
Mm-hmm.
right? Let's say the product is there. You've got a partner. You've got a co-founder. You paid a contractor to create an MVP for you. Whatever it is, you've launched your agency, your product, whatever it is, you are officially launched.
Yes.
So in this phase, this is, I think, the classic view, the classic picture of an entrepreneur who does everything. Like, in this phase, you actually need to do almost everything.
Yeah, this is like the hustle phase.
This is right. This is the quintessential. If you can't make this happen, you got problems. If you can't get a few customers, if you can't bang your head up against the wall, hustling, cold emailing, going to meetups, posting things on message boards, if you can't get that done yourself for your own company, then you are in trouble.
Yeah, I think the theme of this episode is leveraging other people and getting comfortable with outsourcing and delegating. But I think this phase, the early traction, getting like your first 10 customers, paying customers, that's on you. That's it. I don't think that you should be outsourcing that. Like, you can't hire someone and say, get me my first 10 customers.
Right. You can hire someone who specializes in Magento and say, build me an integration with Magento for my software. You can do that, but you can't hire someone to cold email 100 Magento stores and try to close them as your first customers. So, right, there's a differentiation, but now you have no excuse. You finally got your product launched. You have a working product or prototype or an MVP, something that people can look at and use and say, I like it, I don't like it, I'll pay for it, I won't pay for it. So once that excuse is removed, you need to make something happen. And that might take a month, it might take a year, it might take 5 years. I would guess that most businesses die in this phase because they can't get to a place where they either attract enough clients that they're making enough money, or things don't move fast enough that you just lose steam, you just lose motivation.
Yeah, this is really where that stamina comes into play. It's like how long can you just grind it out and claw your way up to, your first 10, 20, 50 paying customers.
Yeah, and I think two things are happening at the same time that are difficult to reconcile in this phase. You are on one hand proving to yourself, trying to prove to yourself that this is a viable business that can make money, that can replace your income, that can, whatever it is you're trying to accomplish, and that's based on performance, revenue, customer acquisition, whatever the hell you want to call it. Like, you need to prove to yourself this is a real business. That I need to continue going with this instead of quitting and moving on to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, and I think this is easily forgotten, you have to deal with the fact that what you're doing in this phase that's very lonely, and you're just hustling and you're doing things that you're kind of ashamed of, sending 50 cold emails a day for a month, the performance that you can create in this phase will dictate your options a little later on. So you kind of have to behave as, yes, you're in private and you're doing these like down and dirty things, like get partnerships and try to figure this stuff out, but you have to deal with the fact that you almost have to act like you're being watched now, because what you do now is going to be looked at later when you try to accomplish the next phase. When you try to hire an employee, you try to find a partner, raise money, get a partnership, get someone to write for your blog, they're going to look back on where you are. What did you accomplish? How long ago did you launch this? Where are you today? Am I jumping on board of a train that's heading in the right direction, picking up steam, or is this just your little baby that you're trying to get off the ground, but you haven't been able to in the past year?
Yeah, I mean, like during this traction phase, you're hustling, and what you're hustling for is to get to that point where you have traction and you have cash coming in every month that you can then reinvest into as we get into the growth phase. But while we're here on this traction phase, you're hustling, you're getting those first customers, you're doing a ton of things yourself. I think this is probably the biggest investment that you're going to make. And it's even bigger than whatever cash you might lay out early on to get that developer to build the MVP. I think your investment in time and energy and stamina in this first year, if I remember back, like in the first few months of Restaurant Engine, I was doing all the customer support myself, all of the website setups myself, which are huge. I remember like Sunday afternoons when I'd rather be out like going to a movie or something. I was inputting food menu items from some diner in Utah.
Oh, yes.
Like 50 plus food items, just doing the website setup myself, because it got me one new paying customer. You know? And I would just do that again and again and get on these consultation calls for a couple hours every single day, until finally it got to the point where it's like, okay, we have a little bit of traction. It's time to start hiring that first customer support person.
Yeah, but that's the lift. Each of these phases, to get out of the phase that you're currently in, just feels like climbing Mount Everest, man. It's just to go from inputting menu items to finally having enough customers that you feel justified in hiring someone to do that for you is just a really hard lift.
Yeah, and the other thing that I continuously struggle with, and I struggled with it back then when I was hiring the first support person, and I'm struggling with it today as I'm getting ready to invest in the next developer position. It's like you're never really. You always kind of wait. You wait and wait and wait until it's like, oh, cash flow is just like through the roof. Like, what are we gonna do with all this money? We got to hire people, right? Like, it is not like that in this kind of bootstrap business. It's at a certain point you have to just give up to the idea that like you're gonna need to invest. And like the key word there is invest. It's not like
spend. Right.
Yeah, and you're not going to see the return on that until a couple of months down the road, and that means in this early traction phase, you're probably taking a pay cut for yourself. If you've been used to the six-figure salary and the corporate job, it's a different ball game when you're building something from scratch on the side, or you're taking time away from your consulting work. That's part of the investment is paying yourself just enough.
I know it's a tough thing. This is that slow SaaS ramp of death. Mm-hmm. So how do I justify how do I justify not investing and going slow, and how do I justify investing and going faster, but not making any more money
Yeah.
because it's going back in. Yeah, the metric I excuse me, I find it really useful to talk internally. Like when I'm talking to my co-founder, um, I find it really useful to to say to him, like, pretend we are being watched. Pretend there's a board of directors and there's somebody out there that's saying, let me see your numbers, let me see your progress, let me see your momentum, because what we do now will dictate our options. So, the big thing I like to look at obviously is revenue, but the next thing is how many free trials and how many new customers were added. And if that number doesn't go up from one month to the next, I am not happy.
Yeah.
Right? So when you start off with like one new customer a month and then you get 5, good. And then you get 10, great. If you go from there and then drop back down to 5 new customers, then
Yeah.
that's not acceptable because
Alarm bells.
alarm.
Yeah.
Right, because even though you're like, oh, but I grew and revenue went up, from an outsider perspective, like you're falling behind. It needs to increase every month. Yes, that's
Yeah.
how I like to look at it.
All right. So we have some traction. We have paying customers. We have some kind of predictable monthly revenue. It's not much. It's enough to pay ourselves a meager little salary for ourselves, right?
Hmm.
The next phase is growth. How do we get this thing up to the next level so that it's like actually a business and no longer a little project?
Right, and so there's obviously a gray area, right? These two steps from traction to growth, um, it's a huge range. So
Yeah.
admittedly, you and I are straddling one and the other. We've got traction and things are moving, but we're not at the big growth phase that things are rock and rolling. And how do you optimize and how do you raise money and how do you do
Yeah.
hire
I think
people?
for me, I've been reluctant to admit to myself that it's time to get into the growth phase and get out
Mhm.
of the traction phase. Because at a certain point, yeah, it takes a lot of stamina to claw your way through that early traction phase, but then it starts to become comfortable and you start to get used to that. And it's like, all right, what at a certain point it's like, what do I need to do differently or what's new? Because whatever I've been doing has been working to get one customer at a time, but now how do we make that 10 customers at a time?
Right, and that's, I think, when you start to bump up against reality. You say, okay, so I lifted this gigantic weight off the ground, and there's a business now, and there's money coming in every month. And now, if I just keep doing the same thing I'm doing, it's just going to grow at the exact same rate, or maybe a little better, but it's not going to go, boom, 5x or 10x in speed. And that's when you come across the fact that what I'm dealing with and what you dealt with, maybe a year ago, and now you're dealing with a different variety of it. All right, you need other people, and that might be employees, that might be partners, that might be, you know, uh, I don't know, like I talked about before, right? A CTO, someone who has a real interest in the business. So that's what we're getting into now. So how do you
Yeah.
go from, okay, there's a business, people are paying, how do you go faster than you currently are?
Yeah. So, I mean, you definitely know that you need to bring on people. It's in most of the time, and this was the case for me, the first people that you want to bring on are customer support people. That may not be the case for everyone. Sometimes the founder, their best role is to continue doing customer support while they outsource the development work or while they outsource the marketing work, whatever it is. Um, I started with, I mean, I still have all hourly um, team. Like my team are all kind of like hourly employees, and I always started them on, I think usually it was like 20 hours a week each person. So like my very first customer support guy who's been with me almost 2 years now, um, started him at 20 hours a week, and within like 6 months he was bumped up to he was like 30 hours and then up to 40 hours. And then the same thing happened for the second customer support person. Started her at 20 hours a week and slowly grew her hours until now. So now they're both 40 hours a week. And then the third person who is in California, she's still like I think like 20, 25 hours a week. Um,
Right, and that minimizes risk. Obviously, it avoids the hiring issues and health insurance. And unfortunately, the reality today is that hiring someone full time with salary and 401k and health benefits is extremely, it's a big hurdle.
Yeah, and I think you don't really need to start thinking about that stuff until it
Yeah,
becomes the reality. I mean, it, you can really get a lot done with a part-time hourly employee, and then kind of work them up as the demand comes through.
right. And
You know?
yeah, that's what I've always done with anyone I've hired for Cardic or other businesses. It's I can't commit to a salary for the next year and all these other issues that go with that. Let's just start off, you know, dancing a little bit before we go on a date. Right?
Yeah,
Let's start part-time. Let's see where it goes. Let's start, with 10 hours a week. Let's see if it gets up to 40. That way you're minimizing your risk. And, I think we'll get into this in a lot more detail in next week's episode when, we're faced with like, okay, how do you actually hire a customer support person? But I wanted to ask you about something you said. You said that the first hire would be customer support. So obviously it depends on a case-by-case basis, but I think the framework to think about this in is, do you hire for the lowest paying, lowest skill work to get that off of your plate? Or do you try to hire someone who can do very high value work like sales or onboarding? Right,
I think
it's a dilemma.
yeah, it's a great question, and this comes back to the return on investment or the value of bringing someone on, and it's going to be different for every person based on your own skills. But the question that I go into when I'm thinking about bringing someone on is, what are they going to do, or what will it be like from day to day when this person is in their role, doing the things that I want them to do? How is that going to change what I'm doing as the founder? What new things am I going to be able to start doing now that I have all this time freed up? And to me, it was like a no-brainer at the time to bring on a customer support person, because I was spending like 80% of the hours of my week doing customer support, and I couldn't even begin to think about doing any kind of marketing plan. I just didn't have any time.
So that presented itself as the obvious. That's where the pain is, and that's where the biggest impact on the business would be if that was off of your plate.
Yeah, like if all this customer support work was off of my plate, then I would be able to spend all those extra hours developing a new marketing plan. That's how I looked at it, and then the same thing happened like a year later when I was, that marketing plan became do all these phone consultation calls, and then it was like, that's taking up all my time. So then I need to get that off my plate, and I hired someone to fill that role, and then that allowed me to further develop the marketing and further develop the product and do different things.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like that's in effect you're removing yourself, and hiring for the role that should be next in line.
Yeah.
Right, from the customer support to free you up to do more of X, and then once the next thing starts to get in your way, hire someone to take care of that. So,
like I could have like, if you look at it the opposite ways, like start with delegating just the lowest level easiest thing to delegate.
Right.
Then I could have just delegated like manage our social media accounts. Right. That's something that is so easy to do and so easy to tell someone how to do, or show them, or send them an article on how to do it. But that wouldn't add any value, and it wasn't going to free up any time. So then I'd be stuck with a person that I'm like struggling to keep them busy.
It's right. It's a nice thing to have, but it doesn't make a big enough impact to justify it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like there were still plenty of manual, like mundane things that I still did myself,
But it wouldn't be a big impact.
It wouldn't be a big impact if I delegated them, so I just kept on doing them myself. And then the other point here that I wanted to make about working with hourly employees on like a part-time basis, 10, 20 hours a week is, yeah, at a certain point you're going to run up against the ceiling of that as well, right? So for a while there, I had someone working. when I started them at 20 hours a week, that meant like they were working 5 hours a day, and or what was it, maybe 4 hours a day. I mean, I had them like 4 days a week, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You didn't have to worry about
then you get to the point where like, oh, they're not working these hours like half the day. So okay, now I got to pick up the slack, or like these customers are antsy, but my guy's not going to be in again until Monday, so I got to handle
You
this.
got to do it anyway.
Yeah, like you're gonna. It's like that stamina. You're still hustling even though you have a team.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tricky thing. It's like, look, if you don't have a stack of somebody else's money or your own money that you're willing to spend, you gotta just keep your hands dirty.
I think it's okay to work in that that friction for a little while.
Yeah.
And then like as 3 or 4 months go by, it's like, okay, now it's time to ramp things up a little bit. Let's bump them up to 30 hours or 40 hours a week, or maybe it's time to hire that next person. You know.
Yeah.
Like just yesterday, I did a team meeting, and this was actually something new that I'm starting. Is these like Monday team meetings, and we're actually doing them like on Slack, and just to get an update on all of our current setups, because we just had like a huge kind of influx of new customers, and like some of the setups are falling behind and things are getting a little bit disorganized. So I want to get things all organized, like who's working on what, when are we delivering what, and that's like one of those moments where it's like, okay, wow, we have a big workload. It's time to figure out, like, are we ready to bring on someone else, or can we just like better organize things and better streamline stuff and work through this current wave? You know, it's a ongoing game that you play.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, if we put our business school hats on for a sec, right? What we're effectively talking about is competitive advantage and focusing on what you do best. In this situation, you're talking just as much about the individual, right? Me and you, ourselves, the person listening to this with their own business, as you are about the company itself. You're saying, what do I do best? What should I be doing all day? And eventually, that's really the only thing you should be doing. Right? I remember having this conversation with my dad and my brother a few years ago about their business. If you look at the whole business, there's so much work that gets done, and then if you really took an objective look at it, there's just this shred in the middle of actual strategy that makes a difference, and everything else it's not busy work, it's work that does not need to be done by the company itself.
Right.
Even writing the copy for the direct mail pieces that go out, and doing the mailing, and the sorting, and the data processing, and all these different things. So our businesses are similar. And now with the web and Odesk, God bless Odesk, we have the ability to kind of behave that way. We can say, what do I do that I should be doing, and what do I do right now that I should not? And you can start to divvy out these tasks in a very efficient way. You don't have to open an office downtown and hire people full-time and do this whole side of business that everyone used to have to do.
Yeah.
You can have customer support, you can get a developer, you can take all these different pieces in your business and effectively outsource them, even though they work for you. You're outsourcing it.
Yeah, and again, coming back to, like, you have to know where you as the founder add the most value, and sometimes you can do something yourself and it's good enough. Like, you can spend an extra week and Google something or figure something out by yourself, but the business would be so much better off if you just bring someone in to handle that for you while you focus on something that you're truly good at. Like, I look at myself, and a lot of the back-end development work, like writing custom functionality, whether it's writing like a plugin for WordPress or developing a new feature, it's something usually I can come up with like a really like hacky solution myself, but I'm not that type of developer, so really I should be bringing someone on to handle that kind of higher level stuff while I focus more on the big picture, the user experience. That's kind of where my strength is. And even with like front-end design and front-end development stuff, that's really my background. These days I spend all my time marketing and working on the business that like now I'm actually like a few years out of the front end development game, and
You're
most
behind.
front end devs are way ahead of me, and like I'm now pulling like some pretty hacky stuff on the front end,
Yeah,
so
I think that's
it's
good.
time
That's good.
to get myself out of that as well.
Yep. So just to finish up this piece of the conversation, um, I'm going to attempt to do a little bit of both. I'm going to attempt to do, okay, customer support so that I can do other things, and at the same time hire someone for sales. Because in my mind, the dream, the goal that I want to get to is that I'm acquiring new customers without me doing the acquiring. So content marketing is one way to do it, and PPC and all these other things. But I want the customer acquisition to come from a place that isn't me doing the work, because if I can get that, then I can build on that.
Yeah.
And then you start to get into a different phase, a different reality. Then you can say, okay, how much money am I willing to spend to acquire this customer? And
Yeah.
that might mean PPC, or it might mean next week, this week actually, I'm starting to work with a sales guy that I'm hiring, and we're going to run an outbound sales experiment effectively. And so that's an example of me not, hiring someone, but not for the lower end, like customer support, but like the other side of things entirely. Like,
Right.
can I effectively just take $1 and put it towards something and acquire customers?
Yeah.
Right. So it's like a different type of hire, or different type of.
Yeah, totally. My thing when it comes to hiring for sales and marketing, and I don't know if this is the right or the wrong way to do it, but I tend to want to spend the time and figure out the system that's working, doing a lot of it myself, and then start to hire people to carry out that thing. Whether
Yep.
it's up until now we've developed a system where we've got content and inbound leads, and then we do phone consultations, and I did those for a while, and then I hired someone to take care of the phone consultations, and I hired people to write the articles and all that stuff, and I removed myself from that. But now it's like back to me doing it again, with the new sales funnel and putting those pieces in place, and then eventually it'll be removing myself from that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's.
I think it's longer and less efficient, and maybe I'm not giving up enough. Or maybe I'm trying to keep too much control like maybe if I brought in someone who's really good at this stuff, they can come up with a better strategy. But I don't know. I mean, I think I'm on top of it for now. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think it's a lower risk way to do it. I think it's smart. I mean, it's a logical process for someone bootstrapping in our situation. The truth is, it might sound exotic to hire a sales guy, but he's effectively going to be doing what I have already done. So,
yeah,
even if I didn't state it the same way as you did, that's really what happened.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay,
exactly.
cool. I figured out how to acquire customers doing this. What if I got someone who's a pro at doing that? He'll hopefully improve it, and if he can do better than I did, I'll be happy with the performance. So it's worth that experiment.
So I think like the final question that I think we should try to tackle here in this is, how do we do this realistically? Because now we're talking about this growth phase, but we're kind of talking about it like all of a sudden you wake up one day and your business has like tens of thousands of dollars in the bank and you're ready to start hiring all these people, but that is far from reality.
Yep.
So how do you do it? Like, how do you make it work financially? How do you get the resources and get these people in to help you when you're still bootstrapping and growing? Even though you have paying customers and you're beyond the early traction, product market fit, what are some ways to make this work?
Well, the first one, money, I think it's pretty straightforward. You can either use your money or you can use other people's money. That's I think it's black and white.
Yeah.
And going into credit card debt, that's using somebody else's money.
Right.
Investors, that's someone else's money. Your money is pretty straightforward. It's your money. So there might be different shades of gray in there, but the money thing is straightforward. If you got the money and you're willing to spend it, you can use your own money. If you don't, then you need to use somebody else's money. And that can be an investor, that can be credit cards, that can potentially be your potential customer themselves, or I think that part is, how much can we really help people on that front?
Yeah.
The world does not care whether or not you have the money. You can either go figure it out or you don't. And that's what we're dealing with. And I'm doing a combination of everything, of my own money and consulting and whatever the hell
Yeah.
else is
Well,
going to
I
work.
think that there is that other option is the consulting work, and of course that comes at a huge cost because in terms of time, right? And that's how I and you and so many people who bootstrap their businesses is they do consulting work on the side, um, and
Yeah.
and that's a good way to pad your bank account while you're starting to invest in other areas and bring on people. So that's one way to do it. But
Yeah.
then of course all that time you spend consulting is going to take you away from the marketing work or the building of the business. So then it's like you're diminishing the return on bringing people in. So it's just a constant cycle.
It is
Um,
tough. So unfortunately, while the money question kind of dictates everything, there really isn't that much to talk about or to do
right.
on that side of things. I think the more interesting thing to talk about is our options. Right? I think oftentimes we get stuck into thinking that our options are very, very limited, when in reality they're your options are as big as your creativity and your ability to sell. So, right, to get a bit more into detail, at least what I try to do and what I've done a lot of over the past few weeks, now that my mindset kind of shifted over to like, all right, screw this, I'm not interested in going slow in 2015. I want to go really fast, and I can't do that myself. As I start to talk to other people, what you have to attract people that you can't currently afford. Right? You need the caliber of person, whether that's on the sales front, the marketing front, the development, whatever it is. You need to attract people that you can't currently justify paying. So you need to figure out a way to sell them the dream on what's in it
Yeah.
for them,
Well, it's
what
in
the
it for them to
potential is.
join you and spend their time working with you, and of course they, not to harp on the money aspect, but like how are they going to make it work? Because
Right.
they're not going to work for free either. So, like a few ways that I think like bootstrappers can offer benefits to potential teammates. Of course, there's like the flexible schedule, working remotely. That's pretty commonplace these days. That's not unique to your company or my company or any, like everyone's working remotely these days. But
Yeah, but it's a big deal to be able to say, work for 10 hours
yeah,
a week with me. You can still make money working on anything else that you want,
yeah.
but put in X amount of time with me, and that it'll be an investment in something for the future for you. So yes, a lot of people in our world can work flexibly, but it's still a huge arrow that we can use.
Yeah, it really is, especially when it's like a small chunk of hours, like you said, like 10, 20 hours a week. Like the flexibility to, like, one of my employees has a baby at home. Actually, three out of us, including myself, have a baby at home. So having that flexibility to be able to take an hour off in the middle of the day and do whatever you need to do is great. I mean, that's
Very attractive.
it becomes a problem if they disappear for a full day or 2 days at a time, of course. But but if that flexibility is built into the expectation of the position, that's a great benefit. I think the other thing that's really important, that's really attractive, is getting to work on really challenging, meaningful projects. Right? So I think this really comes into play with developers. There are a lot of skilled
Right.
developers who can just as easily go out and work for a huge corporation, get paid a six-figure salary, and just man a keyboard and work on some boring shit all day. And they're not going to really improve their skills much. They're not going to get ahead in their career. They're kind of just a number on the balance sheet. Or you can come work for much less money for a bootstrapped company and get to work on features and user experience that touch lots and lots of customers at a time. You get to build, using today's best technologies, and you get to actually have a say in how things are getting built and like the strategy of how things are getting built. I mean,
Right. Hugely attractive.
yeah.
Right. Somebody working at a job that they don't like, and one of the main things I can offer them is you will lead the development in CardHook. And we're going to grow this thing, and you're going to be the guy. You're going to help make the decisions. You and I are going to work together to make the technology decisions for this that we're going to try to grow big.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's one of the things we have. We may as well use it.
Yep. And of course, there's also the learning opportunity. And I feel like sometimes entrepreneurs can like overstate this or try to oversell this aspect of it. Like, oh, work with me for little to no money, but you're going to learn so much, And I think companies in all industries, I mean, can really go overboard with this. I mean, I come from
Right.
Before I got into the web stuff, I was doing music. I thought I was going to work in like recording studios and do engineering. That industry, there's no such thing as a paid internship. It's all unpaid interns who work 40 hours a week for $0 on the deal that they're going to learn something, which frankly they're not going to learn much. So I kind of got out of that industry pretty quickly. But
but there's something there.
But I think in this what we're doing, there really is an opportunity to learn. I'm not saying work for free, obviously, but I'm saying working alongside a real scrappy bootstrapping business, you're going to learn what works, what doesn't. You're going to grab ideas that you can then apply to your own business, whether it's something that you're working on the side right now or something that you might launch in the next year, 2, 3 years.
Yes. I mean, imagine you hired someone to work right alongside you. Imagine just the wide range of things that they would do. And there's something great about working for someone, that you do things that you probably wouldn't normally have done if it was just for you. Right? If I hired someone and was like, okay, every single day I want you to email 5 bloggers and 5 podcasters to try to get me on their show. And then I want you to find 5 other message board things and comment on them. And then I want you to reach out to e-commerce platforms and see if they want to partner. And then I want you to email customer support. And then I want you to look into dunning email offerings. Like, you just learn so much. To do that for a few months will really put you in a position to just have a lot more confidence in starting your own business. And
when you've seen it done before, when you were part of it being done before, and then it comes time to you implementing it for yourself in your own business, I mean, it's so huge to have that kind of experience under your belt. Like, I look back, like, this is something I've been thinking about lately, is I kind of regret, or not regret, but I just wish I had an opportunity to work in a small bootstrapped company myself. But because like I look back on when I worked at a web design agency, and it was fairly small, but it was a web agency doing client work. Those 3 years as a full-time employee there was huge for me when I was doing freelance consulting work myself.
Right.
Because I was a part of it being done on a large scale, and now I was doing it myself on a smaller scale. And I thrived for a couple of years there doing freelance web design work because of that experience. But now that I'm working in this bootstrapped business, part of the reason I feel like I've been slower to do things is because I've never really run a marketing campaign.
Yeah,
I wasn't part of it in another company before. So it's like the experiment is what I'm doing here. And if you get an opportunity to be part of it somewhere else before you do it on your own thing, I mean, it's really, really valuable.
Yes. I mean, my biggest regret in my career is going to work on Wall Street at a school. Like, awesome. I made like $100K my first year out of school at like 22 years old, and it was worthless for me. It was like I should have gone and worked with 5 or 6 other people in a business that probably would have failed, and it would have been infinitely better for my career to see how it works and how it doesn't work and how it fails and what succeeds and what it takes to actually get something off the ground. So I think that's, yes, like overselling the experience thing is bad, but finding the right type of person that can really benefit from this type of environment, I think can be really attractive.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think these days, between the flexible schedule, working, just a couple days a week, and then having like an extra 4 or 5 days a week to do your own thing, and the opportunity to learn on the job in one place and get paid for it, and
Hmm.
then apply it to whatever you're working on yourself on the weekend days, it's like
Yeah,
that's a perfect
I know.
opportunity. And actually, looking back in the episodes here, if you go back to maybe episode 30 or something, when I was talking to Brad Tunar, and he was promoting his new developer position. And that's how he structured it. Was work with Brad side by side as a developer for I think 3 or 4 days a week, and then you have he designed his position for someone who wants to build their own thing.
Yeah,
So
smart.
yeah,
Attract. I mean, it might cause problems later on, whatever, but it can attract the right person. I mean, right now I would kill for a smart, hungry, young person that wants to learn this business that would just freaking help me. A few days a week, 1,000, 2,000 bucks a month, not that many hours. You learn everything, and for my point of view, it would help so much, and on their end, it would be infinitely it would be phenomenal experience to try to get your own thing off the ground. So yeah,
indeed.
I think that's a real asset.
Cool. So I think that's a good place to wrap it up. What do you think?
Um, I yeah, I think the only other thing that we started talking about that I just want to finish on is the options. Um, Getting into a place where you think you don't have any options is it's usually self-inflicted and self-delusional. Um, if you own a business, and if it's got traction in any form, if you've got paying customers and you continue to add paying customers every month, maybe it's not where it needs to be. Maybe it's not making 10, 20 grand a month yet, but if it's starting to move in the right direction, you have a lot more options than you think you do. People want to get involved in web businesses that are showing some signs of success. So as long as you are willing to part with a piece of your business, some of your revenue, anything to that extent, you do have those options. You can raise a little bit of money, you can go to friends and family, you can find an angel investor, you can go out to your customers and ask them if they really love your product, maybe they'd be interested in investing. You can give away a piece of your business, you can give away a piece of your revenue. You really have more options than you think you do.
Yeah, and if you have paying customers, uh, multiple paying customers, then it's time to start uh, trusting that, like trusting that you've achieved product market fit, and you may not have the cash in the bank today, or you might, then it's time to start growing and start. What will it take to get to that to 10x this next year? You
Right.
know,
If it's just money, if it's okay, this works, people are joining, people are paying, people are staying on, I just need more money to make it go faster, then start talking to the people, because there's a lot of money out there and a lot of people who have enough money to say, you know what, I will work for free or for a much reduced rate in the beginning in exchange for a piece of what comes later on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying, I think this is something I just think about constantly, is like you look at investing in hiring someone, and you're like, well, if I bring them on, they're not directly going to impact revenue. It's not, maybe with the exception of a salesperson, hiring this person will not immediately result in X number of new customers, but they will be adding value to the business. You have to start to justify it by, look, this business has achieved a certain number of customers, so it's not really like you're gambling on a potential of throwing money away or throwing time away. It's like, it's already proven that it's viable.
Yes. Yep. Help me get it to the next level, and you will benefit, even if I can't pay you right now what what you're worth or what you expect.
Cool. So yeah, let's wrap it up. I gotta get home to dinner tonight.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to next week where we get to talk to you, who are uh, certainly an expert in hiring people in this way.
I
So I think
wouldn't
that'll
I wouldn't
be.
call it expert, but we'll
I
see.
mean, if an expert is someone that knows a little bit more than than most people, then definitely an expert. But anyway, happy New Year to everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. 2015 is going to be a fantastic year.
Yeah, we're one of my big goals is record and publish 52 of these episodes in 2015. So hopefully we'll stick to it.
Yes, if you want to get into the backlog of other episodes, just head over to bootstrappedweb.com. Of course, if you're enjoying the show, head over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review. We'd really appreciate it, and we'll call you smart at the beginning of the show. And then that's it, Brian. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, Jordan.
Take it easy.
Later.